Hey everyone, welcome to Sociastrology. Today we're going to take a look at the Pisces lunar eclipse, which is taking place on the 7th of September of 2025. So this is the first of two eclipses in this set. This is the lunar eclipse, and then we're going to get on the 21st of September, the solar eclipse in Virgo. And this is the only set of eclipses while we have the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo, where we're actually getting both eclipses in these two signs. And this is also taking place within the context of two Virgo new moons on either side of this lunar eclipse. So throughout this month, there is a huge emphasis on the Virgo and Pisces areas of the sky, as well as the areas of our charts where we have Virgo and Pisces. So I'm going to take this eclipse through house by house for each rising sign so that we can look at it on a personal level. But I do want to say off the bat here that this one looks like it's feeding into the others. This one looks to me like it is speaking to the new moons, or maybe making space for the new moons that we have on either side of it, both in Virgo, which is a very rare occurrence. It only happens every few years or so that we'll get two new moons back to back in the same sign. And especially, of course, then the second one is an eclipse, which is quite a big deal. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and dive into what we can expect on a collective level from this eclipse in Pisces. So as I mentioned, there's a major emphasis on the axis of Virgo and Pisces. And what does this say to us? There's something coming up that is quite significant about service to others, about connection, about empathy, about humility, about compassion. And this is not only sentimental, but it's really about our values and our ideas about the world. So looking at this eclipse, we have the lunar eclipse taking place on the North Node. And this tends to speak to the area of growth, of reaching, of what we're pushing into, what we're trying to grasp onto, what we're trying to take in. Whereas with this being a lunar eclipse, we have the sun on the other side over here with Mercury on the South Node, which is at 18 degrees of Virgo. And this is where we tend to release. It's a kind of diminishing or setting aside, growing out of kind of an energy on this side. So this is all taking place within the context of, again, those new moons, which are on the South Node side of this, which I always find pretty fascinating, which is to say that there's this new release. There's this new shedding of layers that may have held us back. It's this kind of shedding of skin. This purification. There's likely also then to be layers of reorganizing ourselves, realigning ourselves, coming back to a sense of personal truth and understanding. And with this eclipse, there's going to be something very significant about ideas, communications, and cohesion or broader understanding. We do have this little uncomfortable alignment of this lunar eclipse with Venus, which I think is speaking to some of how we've become less comfortable dealing with each other, how we've been a little bit on edge, how we've been trying to hold up our own vision for ourselves, and yet perhaps questioning whether or not we're actually going to be able to realize that. So there's this need to embrace this more lighthearted, fun-loving, adventurous kind of going for it aspect of us, of connecting with people and feeling very worthy of our connections and our community and so forth, and also feeling that others are worthy of us. But when we look at the major or Ptolemaic aspects here, we can see that the lunar eclipse is separating from an opposition with Mercury here, and then it's applying directly to a trine with Jupiter, which is what's ruling this moon. And of course, Mercury is ruling the sun over here, and Mercury ruled both of the new moons in this period of time. So we're getting a strong emphasis about the relationship of Mercury and Jupiter. And they have a very unique relationship because Mercury tends to bridge things together. It tends to try to grab onto whatever information or details that it can in order to make sense of things on an ongoing basis. Whereas Jupiter really likes to organize things into a broader framework, a narrative, a perspective, or a worldview that can be cohesive. And these two together will both seek greater understanding. So there's something here about understanding revelations, what we know and the ideas that we've had, as well as communications that are going through a weird kind of time loop is usually what we get when we're dealing with eclipses. So matters from the past coming up, revelations around communications, revelations around ideas, around connections, perhaps on a global level, even around technology, revelations around what the purpose of certain things are for. And there's this kind of reaching out into the unknown with this lunar eclipse, and yet not knowing exactly what it is that we're reaching for. And there even being a bit of a blockage in terms of what it is that we're able to see, that we're stepping into. As this is going on, we're starting to inch back toward, with all of these outer planets in retrograde, with Saturn having moved back into Pisces after it had been in Aries. Neptune is on its way back into Pisces after moving into Aries. Uranus is working its way back to Taurus. And these are the energies that we had for years prior. So it's almost like we're looking backward, trying to make sense of how things have unfolded for us personally and collectively. And we're trying to make sense of this. We're trying to take all of these discrete bits of information that moon is separating from, all of that evidence, all of those communications, trying to make sense of it, trying to get an image of, okay, how is it that we want to move forward from this? What's the best possible outcome, basically? For a lot of us, this may absolutely have to do with matters of forgiveness or kind of letting bygones be bygones, releasing connections that maybe we've held on to in a state of frustration. Like even if we've let go of the person, kind of holding on to how things unfolded and frustration around that. Some level of understanding that we can't really fully get into the minds of other people. And this kind of embrace of that, and the embrace that a lot of people are really up in the air right now. And a lot of that then having to do with the fact that we do have these outer planet transitions. By next year, by this time next year at least, we should have a much clearer image of how things are going forward, how it is that we're moving into our futures. But for now, during this season, it looks to me like what we're focused on is processing and releasing the past. So there's this energy of interesting kind of clarity of seeing the bigger picture or the deeper picture, seeing the deeper meaning of things during this period of time that allows us to move away from the past, that allows us to gently pull ourselves forward into the future here. Now, this is likely to be pretty introspective and I think kind of backward looking, nostalgic, basically. So previous communications, previous ideas, thoughts, viewpoints, getting revisited during this time. What is it in that experience, your past experience, that informs your values? Parsing that from the rest could be really helpful for us going into the future, because that's really all that we should be bringing with us from that is just memory, and then what are the values that we've picked up from different experiences that we've had, different things that we've had to learn throughout our lives, whatever we've had to release or surrender around with Pisces here, and especially with the ruler of this eclipse then being Jupiter in Cancer. There's this gentle acceptance of the bigger picture. So not only do I expect for this to be a rather introspective period of time, but also to really increase our sensitivity, perhaps even our imagination. If you are a creative type, I think that this can be quite useful. I think that there's just enough tension there with Venus. There's this flowing relationship to Jupiter here from the sun and the moon. There's about to be a nice flowing connection forming from Mercury as well. So I think that that could be really beautiful to utilize this creatively, imaginatively, or just to go through things. And again, pick things apart a bit. We do have that Virgo energy, but then try to get to the deeper meaning of what your experiences have brought for you that's valuable, that informs your values, and then releasing the rest throughout this period of time. And again, this is making space for a new, lighter version, a more purified, even purged kind of a version of ourselves that's coming up with the two Virgo new moons that we're getting on either side of this Pisces lunar eclipse. I think there's also going to be some really wonderful rewards, and I don't just mean tangible, but rewards for empathy, for humility, compassion, care, consideration of others, being able to relate to others, even if sometimes it's a bit difficult, trying not to hold too fast to our specific ideas, maybe creating a little bit of space, opening our minds just a bit. And I don't mean this in the sense of needing to embrace all of the viewpoints that are going around right now. I'm certainly uncomfortable with quite a lot of that. But just around the edges, where can we free up some space in our perspective? Because there's been so much impetus and encouragement to silo ourselves and to block people out and to say that this, everything that doesn't fit into whatever specific niche kind of identity that each of us belongs to or carries, that's somehow awful or terrible. But when it comes to diversity of thought, Uranus in Gemini, especially as it comes back in next year, and then Jupiter in Cancer, we're going to get the best results out of these two by being as open as we can manage to be. Again, this isn't about violating our values. It's about really clarifying them. Looking for any walls or barriers which have been imposed even upon us, and then just allowing for ourselves to remove those. It's a very weirdly gentle, almost weirdly stoic, and yet like beautifully emotional and sensitive kind of an energy that is coming through with this eclipse. So this is an eclipse though. And so we do need to keep in mind, especially because we have Saturn kind of in the mix. It's not quite on there yet, but this is back in Pisces, and this is a Pisces lunar eclipse. But you can see that's at 29 degrees of Pisces. We've got this lunar eclipse at 15 degrees. It's a bit of a stretch, but it's still definitely relevant. And what's most relevant about this Saturn here is that in 2 weeks after this lunar eclipse, when we get the solar eclipse, that's going to be at 28, 29 degrees of Virgo, and it's going to be exactly opposite to that Saturn. So it is in the picture here. But again, I feel like it's almost this stoic kind of emotional depth that it is presenting to the situation here. But I do feel like just looking at the distance there that it's still a bit quiet. It's easing in. And we need to keep in mind this moon, it's applying to that Saturn, and then it's coming around here, and when it opposes it, that's that new moon. So it's like this is a building energy, I think, over the course of these couple of weeks, and that is hugely karmic when we're dealing with the nodal axis plus Saturn, not to mention, of course, Neptune is vaguely in the mix here as well. This is truly speaking to not just our rules, especially with Saturn and Pisces, and there with Neptune. This isn't just our rules and what we think is acceptable, or what the powers that be think are acceptable, or what the social norms are, or whatnot. This is really about what is the energetic signature that we've been dealing with? What is it that we've been putting out there? What is it that we've been absorbing? Has there been any surrender, or even like on the level of kind of suffering in silence kind of a thing that we can get with Saturn and Pisces? It's a very stoic kind of an energy, and yet it can exhaust itself that way. And if we just look at the past couple of years, at least, that we've had Saturn in Pisces since March of 2023, there has been a lot of just trying to push through whatever this is that we've been dealing with, because we're not quite sure what to do. And that's what I think, that's what I feel most strongly about specifically this eclipse in this season. We still don't quite know what to do. And that's why I think that we should work with this on a personal level as much as we can, because that's where we can act now, is we can clear up our energy. We can try to release some burdens, release some unnecessary resentments or grudges, release basically whatever emotional baggage we may be carrying with us, and to create space again for that more purified aspect of us that's going to come in on the front end in an intellectual kind of a way as we have that solar eclipse in Virgo. But I think it's going to come out swinging a bit more next year, where we are figuring out collectively what it is that we're able to do and how to action the kinds of change that we're looking for here. But in the midst of it, we have this underlying kind of karmic energy going on. When we're dealing with eclipses, that tends to be a bit the case, and maybe some people would have some qualms with using the word karmic. It's a very easy word to reach for. Things that have happened in the past coming up as under review. There is that reckoning kind of an energy there. There are consequences. I guess consequences could be a pretty ideal word. So consequences that are intervening within the plans that we're setting out, within our routines. So when I take this through sign by sign, we'll get a little bit more clarity on how that's going to impact us personally. But usually we see eclipses play out on the global stage, geopolitically, and even beyond that, a global culture and so forth. And there have been a huge amount of stories that we've been grappling with over the past year plus, especially 2025, that have been developing in Pisces and that have been getting questioned in Pisces. And these stories have been trying to move forward, Saturn, Neptune especially, the big retrogrades that we had of both Mercury and Venus simultaneously across this same area. The retrograde that we had of Mars through this area as well. So we have right here very sensitive energies around what we've had to review already. So I don't think that this is going to be totally left field stuff that is completely unrelated to what we've already been dealing with this year. I think it's going to be some revelations, some more reckonings and things like this that are impacting us in the specific kinds of ways that it already has. So the narratives that are unraveling right now. And on a lot of different sides. There's been a lot of stuff that we've been sweeping under the rug for ages now, really since the last Saturn-Neptune conjunction that we had in '89, where we've been kind of just trying to push through and live our lives, all the while knowing that we're not really comfortable with the way that things are, the way that things are unfolding. We've been generally very frustrated with what we see in the world, with the fact that there's suffering, and certainly we're seeing it on an extreme level right now, and are fundamentally deeply uncomfortable with what we're seeing, and yet feel pretty powerless to do anything about that. And so all of those stories, those narratives, the push and pull, the drawing of different sides that, can be set against each other, basically, while the same stuff keeps going on. So we've been seeing us look back at this, and I don't think that I have personally seen anyone not, and I do mean that in the double negative sense, I don't think that I've seen anyone not reckoning with the way the world has unfolded as it is. Whenever you tune into any sort of news or entertainment or anything like that, every conversation that we seem to be having in our personal lives really seems to be around that we don't want things to be going this way. So again, I think on a personal level, this is about that purification that a lot of teachers have repeatedly preached to us, that if we want to see change in the world, if we want to create change in the world, that we really need to clear our own energy as much as we can prior, so that we're coming into that with this more Jupiterian kind of a perspective, this more holistic perspective, this ability to really nurture and show kindness and live our values, to understand the world in a way which is supportive and nurturing of humanity and of the earth and all the other little critters that join us here. And I do have to say, when I've been looking at this eclipse, because it's looked so gentle on a personal level, and because it's ruled by that very powerful Jupiter, which is, by the way, exalted in Cancer here, which is now building to a trine with Saturn that is going to stick with us until 2027. They're going to trine each other in Pisces and Cancer this year. And then next year, they're going to be moving into the fire signs, and they will hold that trine on and off through those signs as well. And this is going to be immensely helpful to us. We just spent a year plus with a square between Jupiter and Saturn, which seemed to put us into crisis points, like moments of crisis that we need to respond to, and yet not giving us great solutions or great ways to address those things. So with the trine, we're getting a lot of support when it comes to order and cohesion, rules, understanding where it is that we're at and how to push ourselves forward, how to create new structures, new constructs, which they may not be perfect as well, but we need something to work with to pull us into the future. And that's something, again, we're going to be building into that next year. But all of this energy is still, it's under the radar speaking to each other here. And again, I have to say, if someone is being jerky here, doing terrible stuff, doing stuff that is blowing the minds of the vast majority of humanity, let's say, and there's certainly some people doing things like this, I don't think that that goes unseen by this kind of an eclipse. And I think that we may actually see some of those major consequences coming up then with the solar eclipse, which is going to be opposing directly that Saturn. So there's this underlying theme of compassion, our duty to each other, our ability to take care of each other, our ability to create cohesive and inclusive perspectives of the world. And if we refuse to do that during this time, I don't think that we really make it out of this unscathed. And the connection between the eclipse and Jupiter, which is ruling it, is what we refer to as mutual reception. They're both in each other's signs. So the moon rules Jupiter in Cancer, and Jupiter rules the moon in Pisces. And so the connection between these two is especially potent. So for those acting compassionately, this should be a rather enriching experience. But again, for those who are running afoul of that kind of energy, I think they might be surprised by some of the consequences that wind up coming through from this. I think that that's kind of a lot of what I wanted to say about this lunar eclipse. I will just throw out there, it's eclipse season. Usually there are some leaders that step down, step aside. I think there's been some murmurs about the Ukrainian leader. I don't know how that is going to wind up going. I know that the past set of eclipses looked to me not great for him on a personal level, but hopefully there's some resolution on that conflict as a whole. It would be wonderful if we could put something of the terrible, things that we've been having to witness in the past. And again, start rebuilding. That's what I'm saying about that trine between Jupiter and Saturn, is we're starting to get together the ability to build something up. Now, again, that trine is mostly going to be in the fire signs. It's mostly going to be 2026, 2027. But the more that we can clear out our spirits, our souls, our hearts, our minds now, the better off I think that we are to really push that forward and kind of do a bit of the fight the good fight on the other side of these retrogrades of the outer planets. So yeah, with that, I would say as much healthy processing as we can do. And I would actually, rather than saying that as my advice, I would just say, try to take care of yourself. Try to be really gentle with yourself around this time, because I think the processing is going to happen regardless. And so if you can hopefully not overcommit to things, if you can give yourself some time and some space to just allow for the thoughts to run through, to be processed, to be released, I think that that's going to be one of the best ways that we can personally engage with this lunar eclipse that's in the middle. And yeah, I will be publishing shortly also about the solar eclipse that's coming up. I'm going to do my best to do a full September video as well, but looking at my schedule, I guess I'll just get into some of the logistics stuff now. I'll be moving, but not into an apartment. So I'm going to be looking for an apartment when I get to the other side. It should be all good and fine. I'm all booked and everything like that. But part of the reason why I'm recording so far ahead is I want to avoid any sort of major hiccups. But I do think that there's going to be a full September video, and then we'll get into the solar eclipse in Virgo. We'll also have the members live stream at the end of the month, and I'm going to be doing that on the other side. So that's going to be very exciting. And there are a bunch of changes and improvements that I have planned out and will be implementing when I get to the other side in phases, of course. So yeah, I'm super excited for how the channel is going to be evolving starting in September, maybe even a little sooner than that. So definitely stay tuned. And other than that, we'll go ahead and jump into the sign by sign. Before we do, I just want to say thank you so much for spending this time with me. And if you don't mind hitting the thumbs up button, I would greatly appreciate that. It helps to spread the video around. And do consider subscribing for future videos if you like content like this. And if you would like to support the channel and get some perks and things like that, there are memberships, and the information for that is in the description below. And so thank you so much to the members of this channel for your support. So thank you so much to Angel Niblock, Michelle Howell, JJ, Deborah Keel-Leavitt, Gary A., Startlingly True, Patrick McKenney, Jody, Anne-Marie, C. Rezer, Peace Out, Maria Serral-Hyro, Rachel Windholtz, Lisa S., Aya, The Z-Man 1291, Lynn Newman, Long T Standing, The Nelson Cat Maya, Connie DiMartino, Dolly Geezy, Mango JT, B Love, Grace, Psyche Lloyd, Noah, Aquarian Antiquarian, Susan Martin, Jonathan Mason, Chad Wiseman, Ezekiel David LaRosa, On the Road, Adrienne K, Light Warrior 999, Astrology Party, and SP. Thank you all so much for your support, and much love to you. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the sign by sign. All right, so for Aries, we have this Pisces lunar eclipse taking place in your 12th house. And this is the place of your subconscious. It's things that are a bit outside of your control, places and experiences in which we need to surrender, release, and go within. So this to me looks a lot like what I was saying in the general video, the collective, where it's really about working through and processing a lot of the information that you've taken on, especially the emotional content of the experiences that you've had and the understanding, the ideas around what has taken place. So through our experiences, we can build up some fears, subconscious habits. And this is definitely asking you, especially with the North Node here, it's like you are requested by that North Node to dig into this, to look at that, to try not to sweep that aside. These little habits, potential inhibitions, the way that you expect for things to play out, things like this, where we can feel like we're not totally in control of that perception that we have. So that's the subconscious perception that we have. And a lot of that is stuff that our mind does to just kind of protect us from having similar experiences. But a lot of that then can wind up leading to things like burnout. We have walls up that are pretty strong. If we are trying not to deal with certain things, if we're trying to sweep aside some complex emotions because we're trying to get through the day, we're trying to do our work and live our life, be productive, and so on and so forth, especially because you have both of those solar eclipses in your 6th house of productivity. So I would definitely ask that throughout this period of time for you, where I'm sure you're going to have a lot of stuff to do, you may even have a bit of a shift or a change when it comes to your routine. And you may be adjusting along those lines, but trying not to forget the human needs that you have, the emotional, spiritual needs that you have for some solitude, some time to yourself, some time in quiet. And basically that to just, again, clear this area up a bit so that any self-sabotaging aspects of whatever's going on subconsciously, whatever it is that you've taken on board, so that those can really be released and cleared out. Especially also with Saturn and Neptune now moving into your first house. This is about you really creating a whole new story about who you are, what it is that you're here for, what it is that you enjoy, what it is that you believe. So the more that we can deal with the subconscious stuff first, the better off that we are when we're trying to kind of rebuild. That's one of my favorite things about the fact that transits, of course, they go through the 12th house before they come to the first house. They look at what's going on behind the scenes before they start to project a new kind of an image or a new version of yourself. So if you can spend some time in retreat, just by yourself, maybe you even want to go away a bit, or to just stay home and enjoy your home for a bit, to really reset, reconnect spiritually, reconnect with yourself. And this may look like one of those really cleansing cries. That's what I have to say it, because it just like keeps coming through to me, as that's kind of the energy that I'm looking at of, like, you know, when you're holding on to something, not even intentionally holding on to it, but you just don't have the time to process it. And then you have a moment and you can have just like a really cleansing cry, and then you feel so much better about the whole situation. That's what this really looks like to me. Really hitting the reset button through that process too. Not to mention coming back to just the significance of what goes on in the 12th house. This is one of the first things that we sweep aside, is what we need internally, what we need on this totally abstract, totally invisible level. And yet it's so critical to our well-being. So there's this reminder, a rather emotionally laden reminder, but I don't think that it has to be any sort of negative emotions, really. I think it's more about embracing your emotions. So anytime around the 7th or so that you're able to create some time, some space for yourself to consider and process how it is that you feel about things currently, I think that that's going to clear a lot of things up for you. It's now reminding me of when we're trying to make a decision, and then we have some experience where we're kind of put on hold and we just kind of need to sit there with ourselves, and how much more clear and how much more easily answers can come to us when we're not trying to figure them out cognitively, you know. I would not be surprised if you have some really powerful dreams or connect spiritually, basically, run across some quite significant synchronicities, serendipitous moments that help to process that help to release any of those old chapters. So I would even be looking for signs of renewal, whatever those may be for you. I know that a lot of people love feathers, angel wings, maybe a whole bunch of zeros or ones or something like this. Songs hitting in a certain way, whatever it may be for you personally. These little markers that I would expect to be coming up right now about releasing the past. This could even be 9s that would come through for you, like releasing the past so that you can create space for this new narrative, this new version of yourself that's going to be coming through this year and next year to start with, but it's going to be building up as you have Saturn and Neptune coming into your first house as well. But yeah, I think that's mostly what I would want to say about this to you, is just try not to overlook during this period of time. I know that this is so much easier said than done when we have a daily schedule and things to, complete, but this would be a great time to not just focus on the routine and everything, and to intentionally create a kind of sacred space for yourself to be in, to allow to come through for you, whatever it is that needs to come through. So yeah, I hope that this eclipse treats you super well. I hope it's a great eclipse season for you. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Taurus, we have the Pisces lunar eclipse taking place in your 11th house, which speaks to friends, social groups, hopes, aspirations, dreams. So this can speak to culminations along these lines. So this may show up in some ways as endings or wrapping things up with certain people, But it can also speak to just kind of being called upon to be supportive or to be of service to a friend or someone that you care about, maybe to a group. This may have you feeling called to a cause that you believe in. It's another thing that we see with the 11th house is common cause that we have with other people. And so you may feel really called in that direction to give or to be of support of some cause. So you may kind of need to shift around some social priorities if that's the case. And then we would see, of course, multiple different aspects of that potential lunar eclipse coming through. But this could also really speak to you standing out in some way of something that you're carrying that is helpful and useful and appreciated by those around you. And that in and of itself could be something kind of emotional. We're feeling appreciated. Sometimes that can even be surprising because we might think that we're doing things and just taking the steps that we feel called to take and not really think about the fact that other people are paying attention and that they may well very much appreciate that. Another thing that I would definitely say here is that, especially in this broader season, because you have those two solar eclipses that are going to take place in your 5th house and then this lunar eclipse in your 11th, right in the middle of it, I would say that there's probably something here about social expectations and how sometimes you may feel like you need to conform to certain expectations or you need to realize those for other people, or that there's some kind of pressure on you to be something specific or to carry your energy in a specific way for the sake of other people. There can be strong energies of like the social expectation up in the 11th house, whereas with the 5th house where you have these double new moons and the solar eclipse that's going to be taking place down there, which is also calling you there, this is more about your own personal, authentic, creative expression, like how you genuinely enjoy connecting with the world. And so sometimes we can see those come into conflict a little bit of wanting to be ourselves, but not thinking that we might fully belong or be accepted if we are. And so I would say, especially if there's something coming up around kind of being surprised about being appreciated or being surprised that people have a very favorable like view of you that maybe you just weren't thinking about, where then you can feel like you can come like more into your own and your how do I want to put this, like that when you are authentically yourself and that what you are bringing to the table is uniquely valuable and fundamentally appreciated. And so you should allow for yourself to lean more into that energy. I would fully expect for there to be some sort of a lesson underlying what's going on with this eclipse that speaks directly to that. It's not just a matter of, oh, don't be inhibited or something. It's more along the lines of, rather than being tolerated, genuinely feeling like what it is that you uniquely bring is valued by others as well. So since this is also the house of your aspirations, your hopes, your dreams, there could also be a shift, a twist, a tweak basically in a dream or an aspiration that you have. There may be a greater fullness that you're coming into when it comes to that, a bit of a pivot or something like this. I don't think it may be the case that there's something that's totally falling away, that you're like, yeah, I don't align with that anymore. I'm not on that path anymore, I don't feel. And so I'm going to let that go. There may be something to that, but if that's even the case, I don't think that that's how you are perceiving it anyway. I think that if you were releasing a hope or an aspiration or something like this that you previously had, that it's through an energy of, I'm just freeing up time and space and priority for the things that do really feel aligned and purpose-driven for me. But there is a major pivot when it comes to that that's indicated here. So it's like stepping into a new chapter or a new phase of an aspiration, a dream, a goal that you have for yourself longer term. And the extent to which there's a fuller understanding of the experience that you're wanting to have socially, I think the best that you can get out of that, if that's helpful at all, if there's like a social aspect or, again, an appreciation or a recognition aspect to an aspiration of yours, the emotionality, the emotional connection of social ties, social groups that are involved with that, that should help to clarify, that should help to get you on the best possible path here. And I say that because not only is this in Pisces in your 11th house, and so naturally that's the case for you anyway, but this is also ruled by Jupiter in Cancer, which is in your 3rd house, which also speaks to your community around you, the communities you build and that you participate in. And so you can definitely reap some beautifully strong meaning and connection through the fact that the moon is in Jupiter's sign, Jupiter is in the moon's sign, so they're connecting with each other so wonderfully here. And sorry, I had to do this differently at the hours. I couldn't have the exact eclipse, so it looks like they're not trying, but they definitely are. There's a wonderful opportunity for fulfillment or for a deeper enrichment of your social life throughout this period of time, and communicating with others about your hopes, dreams, visions, things like that. I think that that also goes over quite well. I think that there's a lot of support for you that you might not fully be aware of. You may, again, feel like you're just doing what you should be doing. You're just taking one step after another and not recognizing that other people are taking notice, and also that you may have common cause around you. So people may also really want to support you and give you something of a leg up, which I could also very much see here. And there's also then an underlying lesson that comes through with that. So perhaps with this one, speaking to being willing to ask, being willing to think of your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations, things like this, your ideas about your future as significant enough to like genuinely, openly discuss them with other people and get feedback from others. Because another thing that we can see with the 11th house is people who know people. So your friends might not directly be able to help you with certain things, but they may know people who can help you with certain steps or can pull you into circles or networks or things like that. Or they might just know some aspect of the path for you and just be able to support you in that way as well, or offer moral support. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Taurus. This is a really lovely alignment for you. I kind of particularly love the fact that you have these lining up in your 5th and your 11th house, and that it's tied in with that Jupiter that's in your 3rd. This looks really nice. So I hope that this eclipse treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Gemini, we have the Pisces lunar eclipse taking place in your 10th house. And this house speaks to matters of career, legacy, reputation, your public standing, your public life. So some of the clarity that's going to be coming through for you is likely to be around your ambitions, what it is that you're trying to set up for yourself in the future. And there's likely to be a tie between questions around that, your ambitions, your career, probably for a lot of people, and then also finances, money, comfort, security, stability, and how you can get those two to align with each other in a way that is genuinely enriching. And I don't just mean materially, I particularly actually mean spiritually. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some opportunities to make some of the shifts that you may feel is very overdue when it comes to your career, your public standing, your reputation, through some resource that you have. Your reputation itself may even wind up in something of a feedback loop for you to your resources. So your reputation as a resource being able to then fuel your material resources. And that could be a loop that winds up really kicking off around this point to where you're able to utilize where you're at to push yourself forward. So in some way, your reputation would be paying off. And the clearer that you can be about the impact that you would like to have, the legacy that you would like to create for yourself, I think that for one thing, this eclipse is going to help to clear that up, but it should also then support some of the culminations within your career that are likely to be taking place around this point. Again, or your public image, your reputation, your ambitions of what it is that you're wanting to create of your life. So a big part of this may be straightforwardly recognition due to your reputation, due to you continually feeding into that. And you have had Saturn in your 10th house for the better part of the past few years now. So if you've been putting in effort, if you have been trying to do good work and carry yourself well, to take the responsibilities that are yours, to be accountable, this may be a major moment of reward even for that effort. And perhaps especially around some emotional labor that you do. I mean, if you are like me, it doesn't matter what job you're in. You always wind up doing a whole bunch of extra emotional labor. Just, counseling people, talking to people, understanding where they're coming from, things like this. And you may even wind up hearing how that is also appreciated and seen and kind of validated, recognized, acknowledged at the very least, as to how that is helpful, how that sense of being of service to others, regardless, again, of what field you're in, being of service to those around you in that way, being validating to other people, and therefore being validated for doing so. So I wouldn't overlook that component to your reputation. I think that specifically is something that should be paying off quite well, really for some time. Because we have that North Node up there. We have Jupiter in Cancer in your second house right now. We have Saturn coming back into that house. Neptune's going to be coming back into that house. The sensitivity, the compassion with Pisces in your 10th house that you're bringing to the equation, it's rich for rewards right now. So if sometimes it's a bit demoralizing to do that, to bring that to the table, sometimes it can be a bit draining or a bit tiring, especially if you're in the kind of an environment where people don't really do that back for you. I wouldn't say that this would be the time to not do that, basically. Another thing I would say here is that if this culmination in your work or in your direction, your ambitions, if that is wrapping something up, if that is an ending, which it isn't always straightforwardly an ending when we're dealing with a lunar eclipse, especially one that is on the North Node. But if it is wrapping something up, it's specifically in order to, North Node, realign your ambitions so that they are more supportive of your personal values. So again, that emotional component, that considerate, compassionate component, that is significant to you because you have Pisces in the 10th. This is a moment, whenever we get these Pisces eclipses up in your 10th, up in Pisces, it's pulling you more in that direction, which is genuine for you. And I do have to say, just generally speaking, Jupiter in Cancer in your second should also be laying a pretty solid foundation for you to be able to do that from as well, to feel a little bit safer, to feel a little bit more like shored up. And this might even be on an emotional level to where you're feeling a bit more secure, like you can kind of take a bit more on. But all of that really helps a lot with any sort of pivots that you're needing to make. But this can even be speaking to a greater appreciation by you of what you're bringing to the table, of your ambitions, of your plans for yourself in the future. So recognizing perhaps a lot of the aspects of that you appreciate, that you really enjoy, that you're grateful for, and then recognizing some new things that you'd really like to connect with in the future, and perhaps even some of the pathway becoming clear of that North Node pathway, some of that perhaps becoming clear as the moon passes over that, as to how to get yourself to that point. There could also be some serendipitous moments, some synchronicities or things like this, where you come into contact with, or you come into just a weird kind of an experience of greater clarity around things. Like sometimes we can just run across a YouTube video or a book, or we can just see someone in a position that we're like, wow, I didn't know that was possible. Maybe it's an experience of retirement or a path that you would like to create for yourself, separate even from your work, because the 10th house, it really is the ambitions. It's not specifically career. It's just that's how we usually do that in our lives. But we can absolutely have a completely different thing that we do on the side, that we're trying to accomplish on the side, that's so much more meaningful to us even than our working life. And so we may even see your working life supporting materially and with the emotional security, the resources that you have internally and externally to be able to pursue what's truly meaningful to you as well, even if it's not specifically tied to your work. But yeah, for you guys, for all of the mutable signs, this period of time is going to be quite significant because we have, as I mentioned, 2 new moons in Virgo in a row. The second one, the one that's on September 21st, is an eclipse. That's going to be directly opposite to Saturn there. And these are what we call angular houses. So the 4th has to do with our roots, our home, our private life, our family. And the 10th having to do with our public life, our ambitions, what we're trying to create of our life out in the world. So these are very significant aspects of our life. And usually when we get eclipses that are angular like this, these are pretty far-reaching changes that can wind up reinforcing each other. So there may be something to do with home that's also implicating your ambitions, or vice versa. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Gemini. So I hope that this eclipse treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Cancer, we have the lunar eclipse in Pisces taking place in your 9th house. And the 9th house is a place of expanding your horizons, personal development, expanding your range of experience. And this can be physical, as in travel or experiencing different cultures, or it can be educational, expanding your mind, expanding your range of experience in that way. Ultimately, it's really about stepping outside of your comfort zone, stepping into a broader framework, a broader perspective. So our worldview also winds up showing up in this house. So it's likely that there is this kind of perspective shift that's coming in here, an awakening, broadening into new horizons or recognizing specific horizons that you're wanting to pursue. So on the one hand, this could absolutely speak to a place that you're wanting to experience, which may be pretty far away. This may be a topic or a subject that you're really wanting to sink your teeth into, get deeper into, study. This could even speak to a graduation or something like this. And looking at yourself and your options, your development differently as well. But it can also speak to your worldview, your perspective of things, your political, philosophical, spiritual beliefs about things, going through stepping into a new phase. So on the one hand, that could be a shift as in releasing some beliefs and taking on something else. So you may be coming into someone's perspective or some perspective that's put out there that really shakes up your own and that feels like it really aligns quite well. So that kind of awakening energy to something new, which is really fascinating and that you're wanting to understand more thoroughly, especially with this eclipse being ruled by Jupiter in the 1st house here. This is really speaking to huge personal development and really wonderful personal development. And a lot of that really feeding into then a greater understanding or a more complete understanding of not just quote unquote your place in the world, which can be kind of a limiting thing if our perspective is a little bit skewed that way, which is understandable. There's a lot of things in life that can have us acting a bit smaller than we are or boxing ourselves in. But there should be this kind of developing richness of understanding of yourself and what it is that you're wanting to experience in this life, what it is that you're wanting to reach into. And so an understanding of the possibilities that you have. And with this alignment, I would say that those possibilities that you're recognizing, that you're acknowledging now are much broader, much greater than what you previously have understood for them to be. So like I said, even if this isn't just a graduation from college or something like that, it is a graduation of sorts because it's a recognition of, okay, this is where I'm at. Maybe you didn't even previously conceive of where you're at. And well, if I were to just reach a bit further, then yeah, I could go even beyond this. Maybe there are ideas coming in, again, like that awakening of, I didn't even think that this would be something that I would be into. But now that I have some understanding of my inclination toward this, I want to kind of go all in with that. And that could be a really beautiful experience for you. So yeah, really like learning a new way of looking at yourself, releasing those limiting beliefs. You may even have an opportunity to teach or to impart some of your wisdom, your knowledge, and be appreciated and recognized for that. Like your expertise being rewarded and recognized. Or, like I said, you could be getting really into a subject and studying the heck out of it. I would think that over the past several years that you've had Saturn and Neptune were in your 9th house here, you probably have been doing a lot of learning, a lot of expanding your horizons and so on and so forth. But this may be very surprising then in the sense of not recognizing quite yet, oh, okay, there's a whole other level to this that I'm about to step into. And so doors really opening to a higher or a more thorough experience of something, whether that's higher studies or, again, international connections. Maybe you're going somewhere. Maybe you're connecting with people that are really going to broaden your perspective of things. This should feel like a period of time that is quite supportive of your sense of faith and intuition. Like you're on the right path. You're unfolding in a satisfactory way, in a fulfilling way. So along with potential opportunities for teaching, also potential opportunities for publishing. So if that is something that you've been thinking about or that you've been pursuing, this could speak to a major development along those lines. Maybe you're wanting to start a blog or write a book. Maybe you're wanting to start a YouTube channel, any sort of dissemination of your knowledge. And this is really supportive for something like that. And even if it's not publishing quite yet, this would point to a significant period of time where there's a pivot in that direction as well. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Cancer. So it's a really wonderful, beautiful alignment, especially since you have Jupiter in your 1st house this year. So lots of personal development. And I hope that this eclipse treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Leo, we have the lunar eclipse in Pisces taking place in your 8th house. The 8th house is pretty complex. There's a lot of stuff that is pulled into this. And so this, on the kind of surface level, does speak to other people's resources, partners' finances, things like this. But there's also a major emotional component to that of the emotional or psychological well-being of the people that you're connected to, as well as questions of trust and dependency, attachment, things like this that can crop up in close connections, close relationships, vulnerability, intimacy. And there can also be matters that come up about esoteric kinds of concerns. So taboos or mortality even, experiences of thinking about these kinds of things more, or just esoteric matters in the sense of spirituality and spiritual connection. So there's definitely a very significant emotional component to this. This is not just a financial thing that's coming up because of the fact that this lunar eclipse is being ruled by Jupiter, which is in Cancer in your 12th house. This is another very esoteric, emotionally and spiritually oriented house within your chart. So questions around how it is that you emotionally connect with other people, I think, is a major component to all of this. How secure do you feel in yourself? How much do you feel that you truly trust yourself to respond to any given case or scenario that's coming up for you in a connection? Do you fear losing control in a connection with someone else? Do you feel that you are going to give too much of yourself away in a connection? Do you feel that you are going to lose an aspect of yourself in a connection? Do you worry that you are going to lose control of your emotions in certain connections? Have you had good experiences being vulnerable and interdepending upon other people? I would imagine that the answers to those questions are also pretty complex, and so that's where we get a lot of the many layered kind of aspects of the eighth house that wind up coming through. So major emotional transformation around vulnerability and trust and what it is that you share with other people, what it is that you take on from other people. Again, like I mentioned, the emotional and psychological well-being or resources, so to speak, of other people are also a factor here. So what are you absorbing from other people? Are you potentially dependent a bit on the perspectives or expectations that other people may place upon you? Do you perhaps overemphasize that here and there? I think that often we can do that, and then, especially when that is not treated as this kind of sacred thing that it should be treated as, of, okay, there's clearly like an emotional impact that you can have on someone, maybe treat them gently, maybe be sensitive to that kind of a thing. And then on a personal level, because we've opened up to someone and maybe they haven't treated that the greatest, we can get distrustful, we can get a bit resentful and frustrated around that, and either then blame the other person or blame ourselves in ways that aren't entirely productive or constructive, I should say. So the extent to which you can really be honest with yourself about your experiences of trusting others, have there been betrayals? That is something that would be maybe not the most fun, but certainly poignant for you to look at during this period of time, because you're getting a lot of support spiritually in doing so. There's a lot of personal growth and development, North Node up there with that lunar eclipse in your eighth house, around your emotional vulnerability and your trust, especially of yourself, that you have the ability to grow through. Sorry, I don't know how I started that sentence, so I'm sure the grammar fell apart at some point, but I think my idea there was kind of clear. So yeah, when it comes to that opening up to other people, that's what that transformation is really speaking to around this point. And it's, again, very poignant when we're getting these eclipses. It's speaking to, there's a culmination here. There's an ability to shift and realign something in a better and a healthier direction, especially since, again, we have the two new moons, one of them being a solar eclipse, that are straddling this lunar eclipse in Pisces, both of those taking place in your second house of your own resources, what you're bringing to the table, your own sense of independence and self-sufficiency and self-trust and self-value, self-worth, and so on. So those components are playing together here. Yeah, there could totally be a financial aspect to this because that is a very important thing. But I think that this is really speaking to where it is that you're approaching that whole broad kind of aspect and question of your life right now from an emotional kind of a perspective and a health kind of a perspective. So what this is really opening up is the ability then to release some emotional baggage. And I don't mean that in a pointed way toward you. We all have that kind of a thing. Or again, could be a financial aspect, debts, or any sort of need for approval from someone else. It can be great to have that, but hopefully we are rooting our sense of security and self-worth in our own independent assessment, totally regardless of whether we're getting approval from the outside of us, but also recognizing, hey, getting that approval can also be helpful and nice. It's a nice bonus if we get that, but we shouldn't really be dependent on that, because that hands over, that's where those eighth house power dynamics start to come in. That's handing a lot of power over to someone else. And even if we do trust someone based on experience with them, that can then put a strong onus on them, like a strong responsibility for something that they shouldn't really have to be responsible for as well. So a lot of different reasons to really root that in ourselves. And then if we get it from the outside, then that's great too. But yeah, there could also be something here specifically about debts that are culminating. So this could be paying something off. This could be seeing the rewards of paying something off, or making progress rather on paying something down. This could be being paid what is owed to you, or some significant contract that is coming up for you around this period of time as well. If there is a contract coming up, I wouldn't say don't do it, but looking at the broader picture here, specifically when it comes to contracts, that is an eclipse. Sometimes with an eclipse, we can overlook certain things. There can be certain things that are a bit obscured because it is that obscuration point of the moon. You also have Saturn, which can be complicated in retrograde in that 8th house. You're getting 2 new moons on the 2nd house side of this, speaking to your finances. Plus, you've got Mars in Libra in your 3rd house, where documents tend to come in. So, this lunar eclipse is ruled by Jupiter in your 12th, which is Jupiter, but it's in your 12th. I would expect that if you're going to be signing a contract around this time, it's going to be hard to not overlook some aspect of it. So it might be worth just letting the consideration of the contract cook for a bit and waiting until after the eclipse season, maybe waiting until after September to really enact something like that. But yeah, a great time for any sort of shadow work, releasing any sort of toxic attachments. And this may be something that on the surface you have already released, like an old connection, an old relationship that you've recognized was not great for you. This doesn't even have to be a romantic thing. It could be any sort of an attachment like that, or a way that you were conditioned to seek approval from others and so forth. Doing shadow work around that, releasing that, then on a deeper level, releasing yourself, freeing yourself from that. There can be a sense of feeling kind of stuck or attached to things when it comes to the 8th and 12th house. So the fact that you have this mutual reception between a happy Jupiter, a happy moon, they're supporting each other. This could absolutely speak to a sense of feeling liberated from what was holding you back in a pretty toxic way, probably due to experiences of losing yourself in someone that did not really deserve to have a sense of control over your perspective of yourself or your self-worth. And yeah, ultimately, this is really building up a lot of emotional resilience. And I don't mean that in the sense of to be able to absorb more hits or things like that. No, more so along the lines of rooting your emotional resilience in yourself so that people can do whatever the heck they're going to do, and you know that you're good regardless. That really then restoring your sense of inner peace. There's, with the new moons on the 2nd house side, again, a real opportunity to create and to bloom a new sense of trust, purified trust in yourself. And that ultimately, I think, is going to be like the underlying message when it comes to September for you. But again, there's so many layers when we're dealing with the 8th house that it might look like these different kinds of things, but usually it's going to be a balance of things with other people that are going to be the extra layers, the kind of facade through which that winds up working. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you for now, Leo. So I hope that this eclipse treats you super well, and thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Virgo, this time we have this lunar eclipse taking place in your 7th house of other people, partners, those one-on-one close connections, be they with a friend, partner, as in romantic or business, other people in general. This can also speak to matters of contract, legal questions, things like this. So this house to me is generally pretty straightforward. You have the solar eclipses, you have the double new moon in your 1st house, which I just covered in a recent video, which is calling for you to really prioritize yourself in the broader September timeframe, and especially to release outdated versions of yourself. So that's the context that we're coming into this with. Now, on this side of that equation, with the lunar eclipse taking place on the north node in your 7th house, this is speaking to some culmination, some significant turning point when it comes to your connections. So I would not be surprised if there are certain stories that you have held about yourself, especially yourself relative to other people, that are being released throughout this time in order to free you up, in order to give yourself a sense of purity and purging of old, outdated stuff that doesn't really feel healthy for you. If that is going then hand in hand with you approaching your relationships and your connections differently too. So I'm going to throw this out there because us Pisces and Virgo people, we tend to over accommodate people. So I would expect that what's being brought up here is, like I said in the beginning, this need to prioritize yourself. So how are connections making you feel? I know that we can, especially as emotionally health aware Pisces and Virgo people, we can really offer ourselves a lot of affirmations around, look, you got to watch out for your emotional boundaries, try not to get taken advantage of, things like that, because we love to give. And it can be difficult to then not get taken advantage of sometimes, or to really find people who match us on that level and that we can unabashedly and without too much thought give our all to in a way that's truly satisfying to us, because we know that on the other side of that is going to be something of a feedback loop. So I would expect for some of those natural lessons of ours to be coming up for you in a significant way around this period of time, like coming back to that really core lesson that we're always living out. I'm on the Pisces side of this equation, by the way, but we're very much the same in that respect, which is why that service orientation and emotional health and things like that are always really significant across this axis. So there could be some revelations here. There would potentially be, hopefully not, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's something coming up about an imbalance in a connection where you're unable to overlook that. So on the one hand, totally, that could look like recognizing some red flags, recognizing something that is not quite fair, that you're putting more into than you're getting out of it. But, you know, we can't rule out this could also be a significant turning point in a relationship based on trust, based on you seeing, okay, this person is meeting me halfway. And that's kind of surprising because, as you know, not a lot of people always do. But there could be something here about taking a relationship then to a next level, out of a sense of being able to put your walls down a bit more, because you do have a really wonderful connection with someone, especially because of the fact that this lunar eclipse is being ruled by Jupiter in Cancer in your 11th house. There is social support for you here. There is affirmation. There is support. There's something here where you could put that desiring to give, desiring to nurture energy into something, and yes, see that loop through back to you as well. So I would be paying attention to that throughout this period of time. If there seems to be a deepening into trust, or a leaning into trust, that is such a wonderful thing. And certainly whenever we find that in our lives and in our partnerships, it's inherently going to speak to a significant moment of personal growth, of personal comfort. So that can really speak to then affirming a connection as, yes, this is significant. Yes, this is a life direction realigning connection that I have here. Whether or not it's forever and always, the point here, what's definitely getting pointed out is it's a wonderful kind of a connection. And if that's not clearly present in your life right now, the way that I'm seeing these energies play out in this, there's something here about that becoming a thing. So there may be aspects of yourself that you're needing to release, to look at relationships differently so that you can draw those people in. So there's something of a step, a culmination point along that kind of journey there. And part of that then might be the earlier aspect of that, the more unfortunately usual aspect of that, of finding that you're kind of needing to release something or someone, or prioritize that less, or put your heart and your soul into that a little bit less, which again, for people like us, kind of call into question the satisfaction of that connection as it is. Again, remembering we tend to like to connect with people so that we can feel like we are taking care of them, you know, and that is a legitimate thing. Interdependency isn't necessarily codependency. So having those expectations of each other and things like that, that doesn't have to be a problem. But getting as clear about that as you can throughout this period of time, I think is going to be really wonderful. So partnerships shifting basically to make space for a greater sense of feeling aligned, even with your goals and your growth. So mutual growth. That's what you're naturally looking for, given the way that your chart is set up. And right now is a period of time where that's getting emphasized and you're getting reminded about that. Who is it that's really supporting your goals? Do people offer you affirmation, or do they point out all of the potential pitfalls in something that you are getting excited about? Do people really encourage you to do things? Do you feel more capable when you spend time with someone? Do you feel obligated to someone? Perhaps even, do you feel like they are on a similar path? I mean, that's not always exactly what we should be looking for, but yeah, when you're getting a lunar eclipse on the North Node in your 7th house, this can absolutely speak to, okay, this is someone who's on a similar path, a similar growth path as you, and therefore you're able to create that mutual growth together, that alignment together. So I would say, again, being as honest and open as you can about, at least with yourself, what your expectations are. And then if it feels appropriate, because I know that like just sitting down with someone, especially if it's like a friend, close friend or something, and you're like, these are my expectations for a relationship, can be a little bit weird. But are those expectations getting met? If so, there doesn't really need to be a conversation. If very much not, and you are hoping to realign that connection, which you could potentially do also with this alignment here, being open and honest with them. Worst case scenario is you recognize that you're on a different path with someone. It doesn't mean you need to throw them out of your life, but it's better to know than to not know. And certainly these matters of growing together or growing apart, that's fine. That doesn't have to be a bad thing on the other side either. Just being kind of sensitive to that, being sensitive to other people throughout this period of time should also have some really wonderful kind of social rewards, as long as you are being also honest with yourself. And finally, I would point out that emotions can definitely be running significantly high throughout this period of time, especially in your connections with others. So you may be feeling extra sentimental or extra emotionally kind of attached to people and emotionally responsive to people. So that is something to keep in mind. If you are wanting to keep that in check, that might take a little bit more kind of thinking through around this period of time. But maybe it's also something you really want to embrace and be quite open about. And that could also speak to a significant shift in how you're approaching relationships. If you're just like, well, look, this is something I'm excited about, so I'm just going to be open and clear about that, about how I'm feeling emotionally about certain connections. You could also find that there's some really wonderful, I think I alluded to this before, but some really wonderful emotional support for you in your connections. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Virgo. So I do hope that this lunar eclipse treats you super well, and thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Libra, we have the lunar eclipse in Pisces taking place in your 6th house of your daily routines, your health, your work. So there's something here about your daily life, basically. How it is that you organize that you schedule that, how that looks, basically, in terms of on paper, but also of your experience of it. So this could speak to a major turning point with regard to what it is that you're prioritizing. So your schedule shifting, your tasks, your focus of your energy, your effort. could be shifting significantly throughout this period of time, representing something of a culmination along those lines. So stepping into a new chapter. There could also be a context here of wanting to be of greater service to others, but wanting to do so in a way that's really balanced and healthy. This could even speak to the kind of re-spiritualization or the re-enchantment of your daily life, your daily routine, due to some spiritual breakthroughs that you're experiencing. With the North Node in Pisces in your 6th house, it does bring you back to that sense of like the magic of life and wanting to have that become a greater aspect of your experience of day-to-day life. Now, this can also speak to matters of health. So you'll definitely want to be paying attention to that around this period of time. There could be something that is out of balance that you've been pushing and pushing and pushing to realize. So this could be overworking for sure, that is being pointed out by this lunar eclipse, and a type of overwork that is pushing you toward a sense of burnout or imbalance, or that you're putting too much of your energy or effort into something that is ultimately really outside of yourself. So if you are feeling drained, if your body is sending you signals that something's got to give, I would really encourage paying very close attention to that throughout this period of time, because the significance of it, the potency of that, is likely to be much more significant around this period of time. So you could certainly push yourself to a point of exhaustion. I would even potentially consider, can you take some time where you're stepping back from some duties? So can you slow down your working life in this period of time? Of course, not all of us can. And you do have this eclipse is being ruled by Jupiter and Cancer in your 10th house. You might just be in a period of time in your working life, in your career, where a lot of the future positive unfolding of your career is bound up in this period of time. And so that may be a big part of why you're pushing, because you can see, and I would say that this eclipse kind of affirms the fact that, yes, the quality of the effort that you're putting into things is paying off. It is feeding into your longer term ambitions. But do try to keep in mind that if you burn yourself out, that can be more costly than if you pace yourself. So pacing yourself, I would really encourage trying to create as much balance as you can. And maybe that does look like pulling back a bit from some social relationships. You do have 2 new moons in your 12th house. That can speak to spending more time in quietude on your own, reflecting, and that more so than socialization and things like that, even though that may be enjoyable. With the way that Venus is aligned with this lunar eclipse, there's something of a discomfort there. It's like I can't do all of these things. I can't do my work and have my period of time that I need to reflect and push for these ambitions that I have and be quite as socially available as I usually am. So I would say here, what would be most encouraged to perhaps focus less on throughout September would be that social aspect. I would focus very strongly on you and your long-term goals and how to get there in the most emotionally regulated, physically regulated kind of way. Especially perhaps if there is someone that's a bit draining, that maybe if there is someone who's a little bit dramatic, and you usually like to be really sympathetic to them, you usually love to hold space for them, but right now you might just not have the spoons or the marbles to be able to handle that and the other stuff that's on your plate. And really what this period of time is about is, again, that re-enchantment of your life, that creating space for purpose-driven, emotionally satisfying work and achievement. That's the priority right now. And balancing that with yourself. I want to keep saying that. So yeah, other than all of that, I would say with this major 6th house, 12th house emphasis that you've got going on throughout September. Very important to tend to your body, your spirit in more nurturing ways. So I know it's cliche, but self-care is 100% here. Like that has to be a priority of yours. Maybe it's a number 2 priority after getting things done, but it's got to be way up there. I would also expect if there's been, when it comes to specifically your physical health, I mean, this could even be mental health stuff, emotional health stuff as well. But if there's been something that's been unclear, the kind of the shifts that are implied by these eclipses could jostle some clarity about what's going on there for you. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if there's something here about, for instance, overgiving, trying to be too many things for too many people, draining yourself, seeing physical symptoms of that, worrying about those physical symptoms, and starting to look like you're going to chalk that up to there's a physical ailment, but what it actually is that there is some emotional attachment that's pointing out for you. So this could indicate something along those lines where the way that you are approaching your life and probably not quite prioritizing yourself enough could then have those physical symptomatic effects on you. So something to just kind of keep in mind, especially since you naturally have Pisces in your 6th house. When it comes to health stuff, it's not really going to be the most straightforward kind of a thing, and it can definitely be strongly impacted by your emotional and your emotional state and your regulated kind of a state, you know. If things are out of balance, that's going to have a greater impact on you, even physically. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Libra. So I hope that this lunar eclipse treats you super well. And thank you so much for being here. All right, so for Scorpio, we have the Pisces lunar eclipse taking place in your 5th house of children and personal creative expression, personal authenticity, your own interests, your own joys. So it could feel that there is this culmination point or this kind of graduation point where it pertains to your creativity or to your personal expression, your embrace of what you truly enjoy, your embrace of your own authentic growth, development, and experience. So you may be realizing through events that are cropping up around this time the need to prioritize your joy in your life. So what is it that truly interests you? Especially if there have been new or shifting social groups or people around you, social connections around you. If there have been some new hopes, dreams, aspirations that have cropped up, some new ideas about your future and your social standing and things like that, with the context of this lunar eclipse being 2 new moons, one of them a solar eclipse, taking place in your 11th house of social groups and connections, hopes, aspirations, things like this. So there may be something here about either new social groups reinforcing or affirming your sense of safety and comfort with being really authentic or with pursuing a growth path for you. This could be new ideas that have been coming in that have been fresh and kind of exciting. This could even be ideas about romantic connections, parenting with someone else, parenting your children, ideas that are coming in that are quite helpful and that bring a more lighthearted approach to these areas of life, or reminding you to maybe take this a little bit less seriously. So to me, when we're talking 5th house, 11th house as well, this can speak to matters of social inhibitions or concern over social expectation of us versus our sense of our authentic self, our genuine interests, but feeling like we need to uphold a specific image of ourselves in the world in order to be able to fully tap into our social resources and so forth. So This is definitely encouraging you to release inhibitions around expression, around love, around joy. With the North Node in your fifth house, plus this full moon there, there's something there about needing to release old constructs of how to express yourself, old ideas around maybe how friendships go, how romantic connections go, and stepping then more into a sense of this is just joyful, it's fun, and there's no need to really put myself in any sort of a box when it comes to how I express myself or what I enjoy. So ultimately, this is speaking to a really excellent time for spiritual or creative breakthroughs as well. To me, the fifth house also speaks to a major aspect of the muse or inspiration. So that may also be getting stirred up around this period of time. And you may even want to put something out there into the world with this lunar eclipse being ruled by Jupiter in your ninth house, which speaks to disseminating your knowledge, your ideas, your expression. So personal growth, creativity, spirituality, a spiritedness, basically, of feeling aligned, feeling like you are growing well and that you are fulfilled in your sense of personal growth throughout this period of time. That's all really highlighted here in the sense of that reaching another level and releasing any sort of inhibition around that. And you may very well find that there is a passion project of yours, either that you're already working on that's very significant for you and that may even represent a major aspect of your expression of who you are in the world. Or this may be something that you're starting to really get inspired to kick off, to put more time into, to focus on more. So I would expect catalysts along those lines. Again, maybe this is like the muse really kicking in and catalyzing you to reprioritize this area of your life. And again, if there's a sense of desiring some social affirmation of this as well, there may be some new people that are becoming introduced to your life that maybe they do something cool that's also along those lines, and they may be inspiring you. There's something here about belief in yourself that I think is a major component to the sense of personal development and the emotional growth with Jupiter and Cancer in your ninth house there that you're able to derive from your creative expression. Now, there may also be some major shifts and changes when it comes to hobbies, interests as well, or even your children. So if you have children, for one thing, this could put you on the path of having children. Someone is coming into your life. This could be someone that you wind up having children with. Or this may be something that you're just thinking about quite a bit at this point, and now perhaps readjusting your life with the desired outcome that maybe shortly you will have children, something along these lines. If they're already in your life, I would expect that there are developments, culmination, shifts within those connections. And you may need to be prioritizing along the lines of what you are investing of your time, your energy, your resources into your children, and what you are investing into yourself, your own joys, your own creativity, your own social life. You may even be seeing your children reach a kind of culmination point or a graduation point where they are stepping into a new stage of their life in such a way that is also reflective on where you are at and making you think about that as well. How you might be creating a new chapter in your life as well, inspired then by your children or the children around you. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Scorpio. So I hope that this eclipse treats you super well. And thank you so much for being here. All right, so for Sagittarius, we have the lunar eclipse in Pisces taking place in your fourth house, which speaks to home, family, roots, your background, your sense of your foundation, and your depths, your core. So there's some kind of major culmination along these lines. As one of the mutable signs, you have these eclipses, this eclipse season lining up with two very significant houses of yours. These angular houses is what we call them, 1, 4, 7, and 10. These speak to some very huge aspects of our life, which we tend to have some sense of control over, but also have a lot of bearing on how things are unfolding for us. And so these eclipses, and especially this eclipse season, because as I mentioned, this is the only eclipse season while the North Node is in Pisces and the South Node is in Virgo, where we actually have a Pisces eclipse and a Virgo eclipse, because the alignments are very weird these coming couple of years. So this is likely to be the moment of the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo for you. There's something of a major anchoring of that broader period of time, which is about a year and a half, that's getting directly spoken to and shifted in this coming several weeks here. So what are we dealing with also then with the 10th house? Because we do need to really keep this fully in mind. It's likely that we're going to get this kind of folding in on itself type of cycle that's coming up for you around this time. So now the 10th house, contrary to the 4th, which is like your private life, this is your public life, your public standing, your reputation, your career, your legacy, long-term plans and ambitions for yourself. So there's something about both that kind of work-life, public-private axis of your life that is going through a pretty specific, pretty profound shift around this time. Now, this lunar eclipse is going to speak to, again, a culmination around matters of home, family, personal roots, your core, what it is that it feels like is really driving you from the depths. So this could be a shift in a relationship with a family member. This could be a move that you're making to some other place, even if it's some other neighborhood, having a major impact on you and your family. There could be a new addition to the family. There could be people moving in or out of the home. So on that literal level of the 4th house, that's a lot of what we would expect to potentially be coming up during this time. And I wouldn't then underestimate the significance of the consequence of those shifts and changes. They're likely to be much more potent in terms of realigning you in a positive direction, in an aligned direction, at least, during this period of time. Now, there's also this whole internal emotional component to the 4th house as well. So this speaking to your roots, your core, where it is that you feel like you are rooted and growing from. So this could speak to any sort of interesting childhood experiences of conditioning, expectations, any sort of these conceptions about your lot in life, the lot that you drew in this life, any sort of like intergenerational experiences and things that are passed down through the family. And that could even go kind of literal in terms of inheritances or things like this that are taking place. So there's something here that is prompting you to look at those foundations, those roots, and to make some shifts, some changes. There could be something very significant here about healing along those lines with Pisces here and the double Virgo new moon, in order to get yourself in a position to where you have more room to grow. So I think there's something of it. It may feel like you're getting repotted and you're kind of looking at that soil and seeing what's worth really bringing forward with you and what of that you can let go of. I'm not a gardener, so I don't know if that is literally correct or anything, but that's how I'm envisioning it. This could also fundamentally speak to a sense of a culmination point in your life generally, in your personal and public life, to where you're stepping into a fundamentally new chapter. The 4th house itself can speak to the past. And so there's something about redefining that, releasing a ton there in order to be able to grow outward. So any sort of ancestral or emotional baggage or things like this, I would expect for there to be experiences that kind of force you to look at that, to address it, and to release it. This could also speak to really creating your own sense of home or exercising some greater control over what home means to you. So be that where you're living, who you are living with. This could speak to a major desire to redecorate or change your home in some way so that it feels more personally aligned with you, or like it's more supportive of your growth. And beyond all of that, this is also one of the places of vulnerability. And it's also this lunar eclipse is being ruled by Jupiter, which for this year from June to July of next year, like June of 25 to July of 26, this is in the house of, do you trust other people? Are you able to be vulnerable? Do you feel self-sufficient? Do you feel like you are independent enough to have healthy connections with other people? Is there anything that maybe you've been trying to repress or to not look at, to not deal with? Opening yourself up to that during this period of time is safe, but also poignant. So that is something to keep in mind, that ultimately that is coming up to be looked at so that you can feel a greater sense of belonging, of emotional security, of trust for yourself and others. Especially if, again, in your past, the fourth house, you've had any emotionally difficult experiences or things like this. This is about being really honest with yourself about that and trying to heal that throughout this time so that you can release, get yourself on a new kind of a foundation, start a new chapter, and grow more than you were able in the previous phase. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Sagittarius. So I hope that this eclipse treats you super well, and thank you so much for being here. All right, so for Capricorn, we have the lunar eclipse in Pisces taking place in your third house of communications, community, connections with other people, the people, places, things around you. There's a lot of your daily life that also winds up playing out in this house. We can also see experiences of travel. So considering what we have going on, the context here being 2 new moons in your 9th house, and then the lunar eclipse, one of those new moons being a solar eclipse, and then the lunar eclipse taking place in your 3rd house, there could absolutely be significant matters of travel going on during this period of time. So if that's something that you're doing, I would expect for there to be either a kind of serendipitous connection that helps to realign you in some significant way when it comes to your life direction through that travel, or that the impact of that experience on you. Maybe you're learning something. Maybe you are connecting with a new idea or something like this. Maybe you're learning about a new perspective, a different kind of a worldview. There's something about it that is quite extra significant around this period of time. So for instance, if you travel for work all the time and it doesn't seem like a big standout thing, I would say that expect for those experiences to actually stand out around this period of time. And this going pretty much through September and really beyond, because eclipses can have some lingering effect for a few months. So, but if you're not traveling around this period of time, this is really speaking to your connections with others and the extent to which you can grow through your connections. This may also have something very significant to do with the communicative aspect of that. So this could be calling on you to communicate in some specific, significant way for you. So this could be speeches or arguments that you're making. This could be significant, like letters that you're writing. This could also be contributing to some text that you're intending to publish, or even on a personal level, this can absolutely be you're on a new kind of perspective journey, so to say, and then you're writing about that. So as in like journaling while the universe basically knows in the background, we're actually having you do this because we're having you document a shift in your worldview or a shift in your perspective, your view of the world and your own personal development, and making a record of that so that you can more fully understand it as it's taking place and then afterward. So something about words, writing, communication could really come into this as well. So however much that is becoming a kind of a relevant point for you through this period of time, again, I would expect that this is something about your realignment that's coming up. This could also have so much to do with changing your mind about certain things. Like I was saying, your worldview, your perspective may be changing, but we have here the ideas, the information you have, who you connect with. This is like the familiar world around us and the familiar ideas that we interface with on a day-to-day basis. So for instance, when we look at culturally rooted ideas, this could speak to the general kinds of consensus and ideas of the country that you live in, the culture that you live in. Whereas the ninth house is typically the ideas, the experiences of those which are either taking a higher level perspective of things, as in higher education, learning, gurus, mentors, things like this, where there's a deeper experience. And so you're kind of going to another level in terms of the ideas, turning that into knowledge and wisdom. Or this can also speak to perspectives, worldviews, ideas that come from other cultures that you're not quite as familiar with. And this could totally speak to subcultures, like within a country, just a group of people that tend to look at things a little bit differently, and coming into contact with that more and having a greater understanding and appreciation and possibly even alignment with. Now, there may also be a cathartic experience that you wind up having around communication. You do have Pisces in your third house, so you may be pretty soft-spoken a lot of the time. You may not be that forceful with your language, depending on where your Jupiter is in your chart. You may try to be very affirming of other people and hold space for them, and have that be something of a communication style priority of yours. If that's the case, that's absolutely wonderful. I certainly appreciate people like that. But there may be something there about needing to take a bit of a different tack with how you speak about things, or your speaking style even. I would expect that there's something there about needing to release a way of doing things in order to create space for you to do that differently, for you to reimagine that again. Going then up into a kind of higher perspective on how it is that you connect with people when we're talking ninth house. This could also definitely be speaking to major personal development that you've been going through. And that personal development itself could then bolster how you carry yourself, even how you communicate about yourself, because you're looking at yourself differently. So any sort of outdated beliefs, especially when it comes to playing small or thinking, well, this is fine. I may be super curious about, say, this other part of the world, but, it's not so bad where I am, so I should probably just stay here because it's familiar. That kind of notion, I think, is coming under reconsideration throughout this period of time. And it may not be, because you do have the South Node is in your ninth house, it may not be that you need to go somewhere to experience something, but it's more about bringing into your everyday experience something that is pushing you outside of your comfort zone, or outside of the way that you've done things on a very just mundane day-to-day kind of a level. Also, if you've had any mental burnout, there can be some like cathartic release of that. So taking some time out, trying to reorient how your energy is flowing in your daily life. Maybe you're even deciding something along the lines of, I would rather engage with XYZ less. And maybe those are like specific coworkers or specific neighbors, or in the third house, this could be like a specific sibling or something like that, a family member, that when you interact with them, maybe it kind of brings down your mood or your sense of your state. Because ultimately, around this time, it's going to feel a lot more fulfilling and satisfying if you're able to connect with people from a place of empathy, from a place of values-based affirmative support. So that can be a really wonderful marker throughout this period of time for you as well, of seeking that out, following those paths, following a sense of simple joys in your daily life. What makes you feel more fulfilled? That may be clearing some of the energy or some of the engagement around you, or it could definitely also speak to feeling like maybe on some level, especially mentally or when it comes to your curiosity, things like that, feeling like you've plateaued or something like this, where you might be feeling a bit stagnant and then feeling this need for a kind of cathartic breakout moment, especially since you've had Neptune in your third house for ages, and then Saturn came through here and made some of your thoughts a lot more serious over the past couple years. You may have been trying hard to focus on specific projects, specific goals, and now that period of time may be slowly wrapping up, and there can be this kind of cathartic pat on the back for sure, but then also, okay, I can start to step into something else. I can start to reach for something new. But yeah, other than that, I would say certainly the way that you communicate during this period of time is also likely to be extra significant. So that is something to keep in mind, that you can shift your connections with people. You can shift your life direction even with how it is that you communicate about things, especially now. So that is something to really keep in mind, to perhaps be extra gentle with your words around this time, and to take a long-term perspective on what it is that you're communicating about your daily needs, what it is that your long-term plans are, and how you can best serve those by making significant, but possibly from the outside would look like minor adjustments to your daily life. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Capricorn. So yeah, I hope that this eclipse season treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Aquarius, we have the lunar eclipse in Pisces taking place in your second house of finances, income, earnings, your sense of self-worth, your sense of values. So first off, I want to mention here that when it comes to resources, the second house can come through in some pretty surprising ways as well. So this can even speak to our own internal resources, like our skills, what it is that we're bringing to the table, our ability to emotionally regulate. Basically, what it is that we have going for us and that we're able to develop within ourselves, which we can then use to better our situations. So this may come through as specific shifts, changes, realignments that are coming through, which are financial in nature, material in nature, but they can definitely also speak to matters of self-worth or even other internal resources that I wouldn't be surprised if this is primarily a matter of you looking at these things differently and recognizing them differently. So you may recognize, for instance, within the context of your working life, not just I would like a raise or I would like to make more money, but the value that I'm bringing to the situation is greater than I have previously evaluated. And so I want to see my compensation playing out differently. And of course, that doesn't just have to be financial, even as a reward. But this is really looking at, again, what it is that you're bringing to the equation and evaluating it differently. There's something that's being brought to your attention there. So this can even be then something that has very little to do with other people at all. This could be a scarcity kind of a mindset or a major concern about your material security, materially quantified notions of personal success. So recognizing, again, the resources that you have that may even be completely outside of that whole equation that we've been, in my humble opinion, over identifying with for ages at this point. especially given the fact that our internal resources are not always compensated exactly as they probably should be. So recognizing also the friends that you have available to you, the ability that you have to maintain certain connections, the strength that you have, the emotional resilience that you have to push through complicated matters that others may not have the courage to face. So the extent to which you may undervalue those things, there's something being brought to your attention of, this is actually really important. And the way that that's being brought to your attention can absolutely be something external that's going on. This could be a raise. This could be you deciding to put your resume out there to look for better compensation. This may be looking at your financial situation because you're wanting to make a change going forward, especially around your resources or something like that. If you're wanting to move somewhere, if you are wanting to go independent, if you're wanting to exercise greater control over your medium-term security, stability. There could also be a really wonderful push here for you to exercise some more control over the resources that you already have. Because the thing is, I'm feeling like you probably have something that you're just not fully aware of, and that you're able to utilize in order to get yourself more aligned, especially when it comes to what it is that you truly value. And perhaps especially if there's anything that is coming into that equation, which speaks to your spiritual or internal or emotional well-being, or a desire to be able to, for instance, contribute to your community more, or some cause or something you believe in with Pisces in your second house. That's naturally something that is of significance to you. The value of resources, I would imagine for you, is more based on what is the quality that can come out of those things rather than just counting these things up. And part of the quality of that, I think, for you would also be what feels soulful, what feels purposeful, what feels significant to you. So ultimately, there's this opportunity to align income sources or your resources, generally speaking, your standing. And by aligning that, I mean, there may be an intermediate step here that you're able to create where there's a general goal, but maybe it's been unclear, as it usually is, frustratingly, as to how exactly to get to that goal. This, I would expect to be clarifying the steps, the resources that you have that you can utilize in specific kinds of ways to get you there, especially if there are any qualities of feeling of service or feeling that you are able to experience some sense of healing, especially again around notions of what resources are prioritized. Again, with Pisces here, naturally, you probably have a unique or at least more morally or spiritually oriented perspective on that, on what the priorities should be, or bringing healing to others, being able to work compassionately and bring your resources to bear for the healing even of others. Finally, I would also just point out, you're getting two new moons, a new moon and then a solar eclipse in your 8th house as well on either side of this, that those are going to be playing into this equation too, as kind of the context. And so the way that those houses flow together, certainly there can be matters of finances on both sides of that, your financial collaborations with others and so forth. But I find there's also tones in that axis of the 2nd house and the 8th house when they're coming up together along the lines of matters of trust and self-sufficiency, self-reliance, independence that enables you to trust enough to be interdependent with other people in a healthy way. And of course, when we're dealing with Virgo and Pisces, there are those questions, those desires to have things be both literally and spiritually healthy. So some of the resource bending and turning and looking at it from different facets and figuring out different solutions, different scenarios right now could also speak to, again, wanting to become more independent or wanting to feel less dependent on someone else so that you're able to approach your connections with other people more on the basis of genuine value and trust rather than needing to constantly figure in these quantitative considerations. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Aquarius, for now. So I hope that this eclipse treats you super well, and thank you so much for being here with me. All right, so for Pisces, we have the lunar eclipse in Pisces taking place in your first house of yourself, your body, your appearance, how you see yourself, how you approach people. And so this is going to be speaking to an experience of getting to know yourself better, coming more into an authentic version of yourself through a combined validation of your own personality, your own identity, as well as through shedding away of layers of your identity that have served their purpose, that you are growing out of, that you are moving beyond. This is speaking to getting to know your interests, getting to know your genuine personal values, your sense of alignment, your sense of purpose and motivation much, much more thoroughly. So there could be some major revelations along these lines around your identity, around your sense of self or your life direction. And this may well be pretty emotional in nature. We are having those the two new moons, one of them being a solar eclipse in your 7th house as well around this time. And so it's going to be a lot about you and how you relate to other people and how you see yourself relative to other people and your genuine interests and passions and enjoyment, your genuine creative expression and your creative expression of your own life force through your life. So getting to know yourself better by releasing roles, identities that no longer truly align with you, and doing so very likely in a very intuitive, synchronistic kind of a way. It's likely that a lot of this is just going to present itself to you. So interests, passions, aspects of yourself really becoming kind of unavoidable, and an active confrontation with aspects of yourself that are no longer serving you. So as long as you're not like shrinking away from that, it should be pretty direct in how this lunar eclipse is trying to change you, to make you more aligned. But this could absolutely feel at moments like you're becoming someone else, like you are becoming a different version of yourself. And that can always be pretty bittersweet, especially if there's been some time where we've identified with certain things, certain roles, certain positions, and then now need to find new anchors. Now, that also hopefully shouldn't be too difficult. I think that there's a lot of fascination that's building here, but it will take some major openness and surrender to yourself. So stepping really fully into a sense of self-definition, self-sufficiency, self-reliance for validation. Also really identifying with embodying your intuition, your authenticity, especially if there are new people coming into your life around this time, which we can see with new moons in the 7th house. This could also be you approaching these new relationships in a different way and kind of trying out a different way of dealing with people and a different way of being. But yeah, ultimately, this is speaking to a major personal rebirth of yours. The North Node is in your 1st house, which is really asking you throughout the whole coming year to prioritize yourself, to focus on yourself, to dig into who it is that you are, who it is that you want to be, and how to step into that more fully. And with this lunar eclipse there, it's speaking to really embodying that, really taking action on that now, making that a reality, bringing that into physical form, like drawing down your authentic self to you. So it's a very powerful lunar eclipse for you. And I would definitely be setting personal intentions when it comes to any aspects of yourself that you are wanting to develop further throughout this time. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Pisces. It is a very, very substantial period of time. You've got a new moon in your 7th house on, what is it, about the 23rd or so of August, and then the lunar eclipse in your 1st house on the 7th of September, and then a solar eclipse in your 7th house on the 21st of September, which I'll be speaking more directly to shortly. But that's a lot of personal and interpersonal shakeups that you're going to be going through across these weeks. So yeah, I hope that it treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me.